Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered today in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interest, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Call of the roll.
Mr. C.J. Johnson,
Present.
Miss Jo Ellen Williams,
Present.
Mr. Wilford Facey,
Present.
Miss Janelle Garden,
Present.
Miss Judy Nicholson,
Present.
Mr. Deshaun Cook,
Present.
Miss Kirkan Hilton,
Present.
Mr. Andre Barrett,
Present.
Miss Cherise Williams,
Present.
Mr. Xavier McFarlane,
Present.
Miss Kelly D. Bailey,
Present.
Mr. Francois White,
Present.
Miss Amanda Slew, Mr. Andre Nesbet, Mr. Anthony Beckford,
Present.
Mr. Antoine Oshin, Miss Ashagay Mullins,
Present.
Miss Ashiki Spooner, Miss Ashley Offer, Mr. Bobby Bood, Miss Brittany Bowen, Miss Chrisandra Baker, Miss Claudian Rabsey, Miss Dalian Watson, Mr. Darvion Ricketts, Mr. Davion Combs, Mr. DeCarson Grant, Mr. Demar DeMontignac,
Present.
Mr. Deshaun Cook,
Present.
Miss Emily Williams, Miss Gabrielle Clark,
Present.
Miss Ellie Black, Miss Jada Buckingham, Mr. Javon Lang,
Present.
Miss Genevieve Richards, Miss Janelle Garden,
Present.
Mr. Joel Barrett, Mr. Jovane Brown, Miss Josanna Bryan,
Present.
Miss Colleen Fullwood, Miss Kashika Dobson, Mr. Kenrick Katuru, Mr. Ojay Adlam, Mr. Otni Lamy,
Present.
Mr. Rashid Martin,
Present.
Mr. Ryan Brown, Mr. Rojane Murray, Mr. Rojani Bedesi, Ms. Samantha McNeil, Ms. Sanchia Ailes, Ms. Shanice Davidson, Mr. Shaquille Campbell,
Present.
Ms. Cheyenne Ilton,
Present.
Ms. Shalora Brown, Ms. Cherise Williams, Mr. Stephen
Present.
Williams,
Present.
Ms. Tamara Wisdom, Mr. Timario Daniels,
Present.
Mr. Tevon Cole, Mr. Timoy Burt, Mr. Chuston Grizzle,
Present.
Mr. Winford Facey,
Present.
Mr. Xavier McFarlane,
Present.
House Leader. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for the suspension of the sitting to enable to hear remarks and greetings from parliamentary and other representatives.
The question is that the sitting be suspended to enable us to hear remarks and greetings from parliamentary and other representatives. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now resume its sitting. Statements by ministers. At this time, we welcome Miss Valerie A. Curtis, Clerk to the Houses.
Senator, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, OJCDQC, JP, President of the Senate, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Favour Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, Honorable Floyd Green, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Orlando Terrelong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Mr. Michael Phillips, MP, Senator Gabriela Morris, Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Sports, Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, CDJP, Political Ombudsman, Mrs. Novlet Denton Prince, Acting Managing Director of the Heart Trust, NTA, Ms. Janice Ann Chevans, Senior Director of Youth and Adolescents Policy Division of the Ministry of Education and Youth, Ms. Ronique Roden, Chairperson of the Youth Month Planning Committee, Mr. Orville Levy, Co-Chairman, Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, and other members of the Youth Advisory Council, staff of the Houses of Parliament and the Ministry of Youth, and of the Ministry of Education and Youth, members of the National Youth Parliament, members of the media. It is a great honor for me to welcome you to the 12th sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica. I am especially pleased that the Youth Parliament has returned to Gordon House after meeting last year at the Jamaica Conference Center. I congratulate you on taking the opportunity to represent the interests of your generation by answering the call to become members of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica. You are signaling to the rest of Jamaica that the youth are willing and able to participate in the national discourse on the issues that confront Jamaica. This year's theme, Evoke, encourages you to do just that, to take advantages of the opportunities that present themselves. If we have learned nothing else from the COVID-19 pandemic, we have learned that sometimes unbelievable opportunities present themselves in the midst of adversity. I encourage you to prepare yourself by honing existing skills and acquiring new skill sets that will serve to develop the skill sets that will serve you in the post-COVID world. I encourage you to develop flexibility and agility, which will make you able to pivot to face the vicissitudes of life. In all of this, I encourage each and every one of you to learn to take care of yourself, as good physical and mental health will form the basis of an attempt to develop you. I see from the topic you have chosen to discuss today that you recognize that as leaders, it is not enough to seek to develop yourselves as individuals, but also that you must seek to empower others on the journey of self-development. I am sure the recommendations you will make today will demonstrate your insight and innovation. In closing, I would like to say how proud the Houses of Parliament is to partner with the Ministry of Education and Youth in staging today's sitting of the National Youth Parliament. More than all, I hope that every one of you will inspire other Jamaican youth to develop themselves and shine in whatever sphere they choose. I also hope that you will enjoy today's sitting and that in years to come, you will reflect with great fondness on what will happen here today. Please do have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Ms. Curtis. Clerk to the Houses. At this time, we have Mr. Orville Levy, Co-Chairman, the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica.
Senator, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Pinson, President of the Senate, the Honorable Marissa Colleen Dalbert Filbert, Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Favour Williams, Ministry of Education and Youth, the Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Floyd Green, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Orlando Terrelong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Culture, Entertainment and Sports, the Honorable Michael Phillips, MP, Senator Gabriel Morris, Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Sport, Ms. Valerie A. Curtis, Clerk of the House, the Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, Political Ombudsman, Mrs. Novlet Denton Prince, Managing Director, Hart Trust NSTA, Ms. Jamie Ann Chavans, Senior Director, Youth and Adolescent Policy Division, Ministry of Education and Youth, Ms. Ronique Roden, Chairperson, Youth Month Planning Committee, my fellow council members, youth parliamentarians, good morning. It is my distinct honor to bring greetings on behalf of the Youth Parliament of Jamaica and that of the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica in this, the 12th sitting. Apart from having the responsibility for the technical coordination of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica, the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica is designed to ensure that youth are made equal and valuable partners through their full participation in the decision-making process. To this end, the motions and subsequent solutions being raised here today were developed through consultations that were done by each assigned youth member of parliament. This means that the issues that are going to be tabled today are not hypothetical, but challenges that each and every youth in this nation faces. I want to use this opportunity to acknowledge the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division of the Ministry of Education and the youths of the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica County Co-Chairs who work tirelessly with the youth parliamentarians in their consultations, county projects, and parliamentary preparations, as well as offering them mentorship. We also would like to thank Heart NSTA Trust, Houses of Parliament, and our workshop facilitators who helped us to get ready for today. To you, my youth parliamentarians, I thank you for the dedication and service. You exemplify what is needed in this generation as we chart our way forward to collective prosperity. As Christopher Martin would say, you are a big deal. As you present on motions and areas under the thematic areas of education, crime and violence, rural and youth development, I know today there will be nerves. But remember Philippians 4, verse 13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You can rest assured that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica will be working assiduously to table your recommendations in position papers and to hold the government accountable for the implementations of these solutions. At the end of today, you will join the prestigious pool of NYPJ alumni. We urge you to continue the work in your communities. Keep impacting with an evolved mindset. Some would say that youth leadership in Jamaica is tokenistic, but I stand here today and say that these youth leaders are no tokens. The eyes of the nation are upon you today. As you speak, I urge our policymakers to listen. I urge them to take note. I urge them to take action. God bless you. God bless Jamaica, and we love you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orville Levy, co-chairman of the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica. At this time, this will invite the Senator, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, OJ, CD, QCJP, President of the Senate, joining us virtually.
Let me say, first of all, I acknowledge, of course, the Honorable Ms. Marissa Dalrymple-Philibert, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Ms. Fable Williams, Honorable Fable Williams, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, the Honorable Robert Morgan, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Floyd Green, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Orlando Terrell, Minister of State in the Minister of Culture, Entertainment and Sport, and my colleague from the Senate, Ms. Gabrielle Morris, Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Sport. I understand that Member of Parliament, Michael Phillips, is also joining us today. Of course, I greet the Clerk of the House, Valerie Curtis, all the members of staff at the Gordon House, and all the persons who are involved in the presentation of this most important event, the 12th National Youth Parliament. And let me say how pleased I am to join you today and to bring greetings on behalf of the members of the Honorable Senate of Jamaica. I congratulate you on, first of all, on the use of this hybrid process of persons present in Garden House and other remote participation, which endangers greater flexibility and widens the participation of persons beyond those who have the capacity to present physically in Garden House. In the Senate, we have adapted to using a hybrid approach to our meetings and committees. Initially, we did this as a response to the COVID pandemic, when persons felt unable to attend the meetings physically. In fact, we, after much debate, changed and adapted our standing orders to allow for persons to participate in our meetings without having to be physically present. So we embraced the existing and emerging technologies that we had at our disposal to ensure that the government's business, the business of the country, could continue, notwithstanding the severe limitations of the COVID-19 pandemic. This adaptation to suit prevailing conditions is at the heart of this year's theme, Evolve. So often when we are faced with adverse situations, we must alter the way in which we do our business, the way in which we conduct our business to ensure that we can continue to be engines of change. I encourage you to constantly analyze and adapt accordingly, and to even go beyond that and to anticipate new trends, to equip yourself for surviving in an ever-changing world. It is often said that no good crisis should go wasted. It is often said that every good crisis must present opportunities, and we must take advantage of the opportunities that they are presented by this crisis. I encourage you as individuals to invest in yourselves by taking advantage of the educational opportunities and training opportunities which present. Moreover, as it has been highlighted over the past 2 years, physical and mental health are key as well, and I encourage you to remember the importance of embracing self-care, particularly so in this time of COVID difficulties. I'm sure that today's sitting will be a productive one, and I hope that your enthusiastic approach to seeking solutions will permeate the rest of the society. Thank you very much. Keep safe. May God bless you, and I trust that you'll have a productive day.
Thank you, Senator. The Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, OJCD, QCJP, President of the Senate. At this time, we will have Honorable Favour Williams, MP, and the Minister within the Ministry of Education and Youth.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Let me acknowledge Senator the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Floyd Green, present here with us, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Alonda Terrelong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, MP Michael Phillips from Northwest Manchester, Senator Gabriella Morris, Opposition Spokesperson, Youth and Sports, Mrs. Valerie Curtis, Clerk to the Houses, Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, Political Ombudsman, Ms. Jamie-Ann Chevans, Senior Director, Youth and Adolescents Policy Division, Ministry of Education and Youth. Ms. Ronique Roden, Chairperson, Youth Month Planning Committee. Mr. Orville Levy, Co-Chairman, the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, and other members of the Council, staff of Parliament, media, good morning again. It is my pleasure to welcome you all, especially our selected youth parliamentarians, to this, the 12th sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica. I'm also pleased that once again, the Ministry of Education and Youth has been able to collaborate with the Houses of Parliament to organize this event. Normally, this would have taken place in November as part of the National Youth Month observations. The challenges brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic required some adjustments to the schedule of activities, but happily, here we are in January 2022 for another sitting. I take this opportunity to congratulate today's participants. Many of you are already engaged in community and civic activities aimed at improving the lives and circumstances of your peers. Your interest in Jamaica's governance and legislative processes is equally important, as we cannot separate the activities at the community level from the overarching national governance policies. Since the Jamaica National Youth Parliament was introduced in 2003 as part of the annual Youth Month activities, we have had robust and engaging discussions here at Gordon House, and I am sure today will be no different. Also, with the revamping of the National Youth Parliament in 2016, the parliamentarians have been very active in executing projects towards nation building and strengthening the youth development landscape of Jamaica. The projects are executed based on counties, Cornwall, Middlesex, and Surrey, and have had an impact on over 9,000 young people island-wide. For 2021, in keeping with the challenges presented by the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division of the Ministry of Education and Youth made some adjustments to program delivery in order to engage participants and stakeholders and meet the mandate of the ministry through the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division. Of special note, the ministry received a record 1,055 applications for the 2021 cohort of National Youth Parliamentarians, of which 102 young persons were selected to serve. And of course, we're very sensitive to the gender balance. And so we have 51 males and 51 females. The membership includes persons representing the uniform groups, the Maroons, the wards of the state, and persons differently enabled. The sit-ins are aimed at encouraging you to remain engaged in the democratic process and to counter often cynical outlook that leads some of your colleagues to withdraw from civic activities and the political process, as well as to lose faith in the value of dialogue and the process of governance. This forum provides an opportunity for you to express your views on what is happening in national development in a more informed and organized way. I am encouraging you to build on this interest in this area of national life. Your commitment to training and the diligence you have shown have enabled you to be among those selected to participate. Jamaica needs input in the development of ideas and policies as we seek to move forward. Your ideas are no less important than those of your seniors. I'm sure as you deliberate today, you will make your parents, your schools, and your country proud that the support given you over the years has been a worthwhile investment. Congratulations again, and may you have a productive and meaningful time here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Williams. We now have Mrs. Novlet Denton Prince, Acting Managing Director, Heart NSTA Trust.
President of the Senate, Senator Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Marisa Colleen Dalrymple Philibert, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, Honorable Favour Williams, Minister without Portfolio, Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, Minister without Portfolio, Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Floyd Green. Thank you. Minister of State, Ministry of Culture, Entertainment and Sport, the Honorable Orlando Terlong, Honorable Michael Phillips, MP, Opposition Spokesperson, Youth and Sports, Senator Gabriela Morris, Clerk of the Houses, Ms. Valerie A. Curtis, Political Ombudsman, the Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, Senior Director Youth and Adolescents Policy Division, Ministry of Education and Youth, Ms. Jamie Ann Shevans, Chairperson, Youth Month Planning Committee, Ms. Ronnie Roden, Co-Chairman, the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, Mr. Orville Levy, young parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure to share with you this morning as we assemble for this, the 12th sitting of the National Youth Parliament. It is indeed humbling for me to be among this august group of current and future leaders, policymakers, and barrier breakers. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, wrote, and I quote, "The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently." This sitting of the National Youth Parliament is a strong demonstration of our nation's encouragement and support of grooming young persons to think differently, hence nurturing a future of integrity. At the Human Employment and Resource Training National Service Training Agency Trust, Heart NSTA Trust, our major responsibility is to equip young persons with the appropriate attitude, skills, and competences to generate high levels of social and economic independence, an integral factor in the advancement of this beautiful nation. Heart NSTA Trust has been in inception since 1982, approximately 40 years. As young persons, you know that 40s is the new 20s. The organization continues to facilitate with renewed fervor the expansion of access to new and emerging skills through the development and delivery of labor market, demand-driven training, certification, and job placement opportunities. There's also a thrust to have greater engagement of youth and adults with low levels of numeracy and literacy. The Trust is the torchbearer of technical, vocational, education and training, TVET, in Jamaica and the Caribbean, in pursuit of the development of our young people to become the ideal CARICOM citizen worker, being able to demonstrate independent and critical thinking, seize the economic opportunities provided by the global environment, and create and take advantage of opportunities to improve, maintain, and promote social well-being. The organization's core business also involves the molding of youths to master their niche as global citizens, contributing to our growth as a country in the world economy. Heart NSTA Trust has consistently been involved in developing, implementing, and supporting various initiatives in collaboration with many partner institutions and organizations to include the Ministry of Education and Youth. One very recent partnership was supporting the recently concluding Youth Month activities, where the organization facilitated, among other initiatives, roundtable discussions and Ponder Corner activities as part of the accelerated approach to recruit, assess, and certify individuals. I am especially heartened that the current initiative of which we are a part today, the National Youth Parliament, has been sustained over the past 12 years. Indeed, young people are stepping forward to participate in critical activities such as this, which not only inspires, but sharpens future skills and fashion the thought processes towards governance, responsibility, accountability, and integrity, a positive sign indicating a bright future for this, our island home. Young men and women here today, you have committed yourselves to being a part of the solution of whatever is currently ailing us, to ensure the sustainability of building societal resilience through the application of effective governance mechanisms, which this forum allows. Your willingness to avail yourselves to take up the mantle of governance and leadership is commendable. I encourage you all to remain committed to the tasks that are presented to you and to tap into the opportunities to use your energy and passion to positively change Jamaica. This is your opportunity to use your voices to bring about changes in this country. I will close with life lessons from two great men, one of whom is a Jamaican, of course. They are Sir Winston Churchill and the Honorable Dennis Laylow. Churchill's life lessons are, 1, look ahead and stay focused. It is always wise to look ahead and difficult to look further than you can see. 2, be courageous and aggressive. Courage is the quality that guarantees all others. 3, don't lose your enthusiasm. Success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. Dennis Laylow's life lesson is the people who get on in this world are those who get up and look for circumstances they want. And if they can't find them, they make them. Young Jamaicans, young people of the future, evolve. Let's own our destiny. Have a wonderfully productive day. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mrs. Novelet Denton Prince, the Acting Managing Director, Heart NSTA Trust. At this time, we'll have the Honorable Marissa Darimpo Philibert, CDMP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. This morning, good morning to everyone, first of all. I want, first of all, to acknowledge Senator, the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate, the Honorable Fable Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, the Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Floyd Green, Minister without portfolio, also in the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Honorable Orlando Terrell, Minister of State in the Ministry of Culture, Entertainment and Sports. Let me also recognize Senator Gabriela Morris, Opposition Spokesperson on Youth and Sports, Mr. Mikhail Phillips, Opposition Spokesperson, Housing, Transport and Works, who is with you in the Parliament. Of course, Ms. Valerie Curtis, Clerk to the Houses of Parliament, and all the staff of the Houses of Parliament and the Ministry of Youth, Education and Information, the Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, our political ombudsman, Mrs. Novelette Denton Prince from the Heart Trust NTA, Ms. Jamie Ann Shiban, Senior Director of Youth and Adolescent Policy in the Ministry of Education and Youth, Ms. Ronnie Groden, Chairperson of the Youth Month Planning Committee, Mr. Orville Levy, Co-Chairman, Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, and also other members of the Youth Advisory Council, members of the National Youth Parliament, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, with you in Parliament, and those joining us virtually. First of all, I want to say I am not happy that I'm not physically with you as I usually am, but so it is in life. And as the President of the Senate said, technology has allowed us to participate, although we are not physically present there. This year's theme, Evolve, is really a timely call to action for the youth of Jamaica, if indeed not the youth of the entire world. This evolution that you're being called to undergo is not the passive process of adaptation that many people may think it to be. In this instance, you, the youth of our country, are being encouraged to reinvent yourselves, and to do so through training, through changing mindsets, through envisioning new development paradigms, to finally rebranding yourselves as the innovative, responsive, and socially conscious persons your country needs you to be. In order to do this, I want to encourage you to make healthy lifestyle choices and push yourselves to be exceptional. Our country and the world is in need of innovators, persons who just don't think outside the box, but who will reconceptualize a reality without actually having that box. Persons who look at the global situation will probably see a myriad of possibilities where others only see despair. Technological advances may play a part in the process, but imagination, creativity, and a willingness to go where no one else has been before, or to recognize the value in using an existing practice in a different way will be key. The beauty of innovation, of course, is that it can impact any field in life. Entrepreneurship goes hand in hand with innovation. You, the youth, are being called today to extend your leadership role, to evolve into being creators of businesses. Monetizing innovative ideas will be crucial to spurring economic activity which is particularly important in a declining global economy. Entrepreneurial activity will spur employment opportunities for youth and other members of the society. You are therefore called to evolve into intrapreneurs and use entrepreneurial thinking, skills, and behaviors in established organizations or to revive flagging endeavors. You, the youth, will be the ones to make forays into expanding the orange economy, creative industries, the blue economy arising from sustainable use of marine resources, and green economic activities, those aimed at economic growth. So, young people, the future of our country, you are being encouraged to evolve and to assert yourselves in the world of technology. But I want to pause for a moment to ask you to bear in mind that this call to action, the call to evolve in a new and fast-changing world, can only benefit us if we remain sensitive and compassionate to the needs of persons who are too often left behind in society. The human element is so very important. I will tell you for myself, I simply don't like speaking to an answering machine. I really prefer being connected to the person to whom I speak. So, young people, let us evolve and answer the call to action, remembering always our fellow men. And finally, when we arrive at our destination and life is bubbling and moving, never forget our beginnings. Never forget where we came from. So I want, in closing, to charge you today to lead your families and your communities and your country by example. It is my hope that the contributions you will make today will spur the young people of Jamaica also to evolve and to expand their spiritual, their academic, economic possibilities and improve their spiritual, their mental, and their physical well-being, always being conscious of the needs of each others. I thank you all, and as I said, I wish for you all a wonderful and a productive day, and regret so much that this year I'm not able to be physically with you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, the Honorable Marissa Darimple Philibert, CDMP, Speaker of the House of Representatives. At this time, we'll have the Senator Gabriela Morris, Opposition spokesperson on Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. Good morning, everyone. Let me first pause to acknowledge President of the Senate, Senator the Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, Honorable Floyd Green, Minister of State in the Ministry of Culture, Entertainment and Sport, Honorable Orlando Terrelong, Member of Parliament, Michael Phillips, Clerk to the Houses of Parliament, Ms. Valerie Curtis, Political Ombudsman, Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, Managing Director of Heart Trust NSTA, Ms. Novlet Denton Prince, Senior Director at the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division in the Ministry of Education and Youth, Ms. Jamie Ann Shabazz. Youth Month Planning Committee Chairperson, Ms. Ronique Roden. Mr. Orville Levy of the National Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, and other members of the council, members of the media, other specially invited guests, viewers online, and most importantly, members of this National Youth Parliament, good morning. It is an absolute privilege for me to join and bring greetings at this, the 12th sitting of the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica. I have to confess that over the years, I've watched many friends and colleagues go through this process, and I've come to appreciate it as a training ground for young people. Because not only does the Youth Parliament provide an opportunity for personal development of young people, but I believe that most importantly, it engenders a spirit of national development, of nation building, and gives young people an appreciation for politics, for governance, and for democracy. And so I'm extremely happy that despite the challenges associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have managed to continue this program. And I want to tip my hat to the persons in the Youth and Advocacy, Youth and Adolescent Policy Division, and the other stakeholders who have worked to make this sitting a reality. To the youth parliamentarians, the men and women of the moment, I wish I was there with you to experience your passion that I know you will deliver this morning. But I want to invite you for a very short moment to just look around you, to take a look at where you sit, because that place is of paramount importance. And your seat, yes, that very seat in which you sit, is a seat of power, of influence, and of impact. And this Gordon House, the Parliament of Jamaica, is one of the most important places where important decisions are made for you, for me, for Jamaicans. And so as you sit in this house, I want you to remember two very important things. One, that you all bear tremendous power. Acknowledge that and own that. Two, you have an opportunity through this youth parliament to make an impact both inside the house as you deliver your spirited presentations and give your ideas for moving Jamaica forward. But importantly, you also have an opportunity to make an impact outside that place as you step into your communities, into your schools, into your youth clubs, into your political organizations. And I want you to take that impact very seriously. Because no more than ever, youth parliamentarians, our generation is being tasked with stepping up to the plate. Our generation is being tasked with being fresh, emerging leaders, showing up to be agents of change in a weary world that is challenged by COVID-19, challenged by environmental degradation, challenged by lack of opportunities for us as young people. And we are called for such a time as this to share our energy, to share our light, to share our creativity, to share our vision, and to lead a very important process of evolution that is critical if we want to move Jamaica forward. And so as I close, I want to remind you to keep that impact going. And it is also my hope that in the very near future, many of you sitting in the house this morning will join me in these halls and make an even greater impact. But until then, I want to urge you to keep your light burning. I want to urge you to keep making your own impact in your own way. This morning, I look forward to your contributions. I look forward to hearing your suggestions, your ideas, your positions. And I hope that at the end of today and in the future, these ideas will bear fruit and become policy. I want to thank you also for your commitment to Jamaica, to youth development. And I want to say to you that though you might have that spirit of nervousness this morning, I want you to have in your head the impact that you can make through your presence. I wish you all a productive sitting. I wish you all the best of luck. And I hope that you all will have a good day. May God bless you.
Thank you, the Senator Gabriela Morris, Opposition Spokesperson, Youth Affairs. At this time, we'll have the Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, CDJP, Political Ombudsman.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be the one to bring the punto final to what has been a wonderful morning session. I want to permit me, please, President of the Senate and Speaker of the House of Representatives, permit me to adopt the protocol so ably established by Ms. Valerie Curtis and by the Speaker. It is truly an honor to be here with you today, and I want to join in thanking all the distinguished parliamentarians and ministers who have joined you today, which is a statement of the regard in which the Youth Parliament and, more importantly, young people are held in Jamaica by these leaders. I'm grateful that I have the chance to meet you, to look at you, and to acknowledge that you're from all across Jamaica. And, you know, as a country girl myself from St. Bess, I love to see when we have all of Jamaica gathered together in any one place. As you have been working and dealing with matters like safe space talk, Bust the Youth, digital literacy, truth about period, and other topics, I must commend you for the hard work you have already done in your capacity as parliamentarians. You have an opportunity to evolve and to help Jamaica evolve and help us to rebrand, revamp our individual lives so we may be better leaders. 2022, the year of Jubilee, may be the year of reset for Jamaica, land we love, and you will have an important role to play. Agreement on ethics and personal conduct is vital in a political system, and this is to be found in the Code of Conduct, the Jamaica's Constitution, our anthem, motto, and pledge, and buttressed by legislation including the Representation of the People Act, the Political Ombudsman Interim Act, and further expanded in other documents setting up other commissions of Parliament and institutions. Many of these were signed right here in Gordon House, and on September 20, 2005, the leaders of the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party signed an agreement and declaration on political conduct right here, intended to guide us and to bind all political officials and aspirants. They also established the Political Ombudsman as a commission of Parliament, tasked to investigate complaints about conduct of political actors which might harm good relations between supporters of different political parties or may breach the code. You have all been provided today with a copy of the code. Please take the time to read it. It is inspiring because it reflects the fact that our political leaders over time have believed that we can be a great people and that as individual politicians, we can do the right thing and be admired by the citizens of Jamaica. We must now recommit to those ideas that caused us to create a code of conduct. Recommit, reset, so that Jamaica can evolve under God. Symbolically, at a later date, and I hope at the end of this sitting or as early as can be arranged, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Parliamentary Opposition will call on me at the Office of the Political Ombudsman to sign a certificate signifying and affirming their promise on your behalf to promote and obey the standards set out in the Code. This will help you to conduct yourselves well and carry out your duties as parliamentarians in and out of Gordon House. Although this was written for parliamentarians and you're a youth parliament for a temporary period, you may find the content of this material useful in a reset for yourself. As you are now in the parliament, I urge you to know and practice some political virtues, which I know any parliamentarian who is present will agree with me. Some of the virtues, not the full list, but some important ones are prudence, which I like to call restraint. I used to describe this as putting ice in your shoes, not talking when you're hot, not talking to impress, but talking because it has value and meaning and will help others. Integrity, that you stand on a solid rock, that your decisions are made based on a core belief in what is right, that you value your integrity, that you're willing to hear others and compromise on matters where you can get a good result, even if it's not your result, but that it can be a good and helpful result. And that requires wisdom, and wisdom requires deep reflection, listening to other people, and being open to being better than you started off being. This allows you to offer options in any discussion, options, so that you come from a position of knowledge. So reading, listening to the news, being knowledgeable about topics even before you know you're going to need them in your work. Adaptability, being willing to change with the time and the situation. Couple others, liveliness, try not to be boring. Let us not put people to sleep when we have things to say. I'm going to take that to mean that you're not yet sleeping. Also, humor then, in the wider sense. Humor is important because it allows you to hear things in a different way. We're not always harmed and hurt if we have a light sense of who we are, and we're willing to laugh at ourselves and say, oh boy, I messed up that time, never mind. Humor is good. But when we use humor, we have to realize that it can sometimes go wrong. And a lot of the public utterances I deal with is humor gone awry. And what happens is that that may breach the code, because humor must always be accompanied by empathy, by compassion, and respect. Otherwise, it's something else, no matter how well-intentioned you are. So always remember, yes, drop a little joke in here and there, but do it in a way that doesn't make any individual look bad. Don't do that. Be empathetic, be compassionate, and be respectful. I know many of you already practice that in your lives. Identify and hone your representational and leadership skills, because everyone who sits in the parliament represents a lot of people who are not physically present. That should always be front and center. It's not you that's the most important one. You're the privileged one, that they have put their trust in you. As you have been selected out of this 1,000 persons, you have been selected to better represent the needs of the group that you represent. It's really a big deal, you know, and I use that all the time, so I was pleased that somebody else talked about the big deal earlier. I think every speech I've written since that song came out, I've had the words big deal in there, because I think it's just so absolutely on point. And I must say that for you, gratitude is a must, because this is truly a privilege. Please listen to other young people. Seek them out. Seek to hear what they have to say about your ideas and the things you want to put forward. Consult. I have work for you to do, because I will call on you later in this year to help the political ombudsman in rolling out a civic education program that we are far into. I'm hoping that you and others who are even not selected might find that improving your civic education and sharing that with the populace in general will see us having a better turnout at elections of voters, a better understanding of Jamaica, and a greater sense of pride in this wonderful country that we're privileged to be a part of. So I look forward to getting the code signed by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Parliamentary Opposition shortly. So I charge you all as youth parliamentarians to act according to Jamaica's agreed standards for politics or better. I charge you to carry yourselves and perform your functions in a way that will bring pride to the persons you love and respect the most. For 2022, Jamaica's Year of Jubilee, help to lead a reset in your parliamentary role and beyond as you evolve as great Jamaican leaders of this moment. May God continue to bless you and bless Jamaica, land we love. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the Honorable Donna Parchment Brown, CDJP, Political Ombudsman. This Honorable House now resume its sittings. Announcement.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Report from the Youth Parliament County of Cornwall project titled Bust the Youths, Youth Empowerment and Resume Building Workshop. Report from the Youth Parliament County of Middlesex County project titled The Literate Digital Mind, Digital Literacy Workshop. Report from the Youth Parliament County of Surrey project DREAM, Back to School Enrichment Program and Safe Space Talks.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions. Papers. Reports from committees. Notices of motions given orally.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the motion. Whereas the novel coronavirus has highlighted the shortcomings of the country's educational and technological prowess, notably amongst marginalized youth.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of this House, I will move the motion, whereas the national poverty rate in Jamaica declined over the 2 decades prior to 2017, but rural poverty remains stubbornly high, and whereas efforts for rural development are predominantly focused on agricultural development and not other areas for meaningful change, be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2021 debates suitable development initiatives in agriculture, tourism, and the renewables sector that would bring about a paradigm shift in rural development, and be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commits to making recommendations from this debate to the Ministry of Education and Youth for the government to consider and develop the necessary policies to effect implementation.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the motion whereas the ongoing pandemic has revealed great deficiencies in the nation's infrastructure capacity, especially that of telecommunications to engage with young persons, and whereas there has been a decline over 70% in the number of youth clubs island-wide since 1998, and further decline is likely in the absence of immediate intervention. Be it resolved that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica debates methodologies that can be implemented or improved upon to address the elements of the nation's ailing infrastructure and increase youth engagement through youth clubs. And be it further resolved that the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica commit to making recommendations from this debate to the Ministry of Education and Youth for the government to consider and develop the necessary policies to effect implementation.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business require notice. Motions relating to the sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House, first obtained. Public business. House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable the members to take the motion, notice of which they gave earlier.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the members to take the motions, notice of which they gave earlier. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The member from St. Thomas Western, Ashagay Mullins.
Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented crisis in the education system. This emergency has led to a massive school closure in early 2020. This catastrophe has caused some of our Jamaican youth to fall off the learning curve, specifically within rural communities. Due to this closure, remote learning methods were introduced. Zoom classes, lessons via television and radio, and printed worksheets for those without internet access were some of the innovative methods introduced. But some students were still left out of the equation, looking at the rural youths. From thorough observation within my constituency, St. Thomas Western, many children were busy playing, riding bicycles, playing football, and going to the river for the swim. And some parents, they only take this as a public holiday period. Some of them didn't even make the necessary connections to visit the school to find out what was happening and how they can get their children involved in the online and learning process. Mr. Speaker, some children, or in some households, there are only one device and one children. Mr. Speaker, for example, in some households, there's one device and 3 children. This is the harsh and current reality of many rural youth. I have seen children suffer from not having access to a tablet, a smartphone, or a laptop, and trust me, it pains my heart. Mr. Speaker, I am therefore on a mission to get these marginalized youth fully engaged. My policy prescription is to host booster sessions dubbed as Back in It. In rural communities to help students who are being marginalized. In order to actualize these booster sessions, we will need to partner with active youth clubs and NGO entities. Starting in St. Thomas, we will need to partner with the St. Thomas Parish Youth Council, Governor General, I believe, ambassadors from the Surrey County, and trained teaching professionals. These free sessions will be held at community centers, large open areas, and within church halls. These booster sessions will comprise of personal development sessions, critical thinking sessions, and basic digital literacy skills lessons. And of course, we will be covering content from the curriculum. Mr. Speaker, this learning crisis is not only affecting children locally, but also on a global scale. Locally, the number is quite stunning. The Ministry of Education and Youth highlighted that approximately 140,000 Jamaican children have been disengaged since March 2020. Recently, I was given the opportunity to serve as a panelist at the 16th Annual Child Reserve Conference, where we explored the topic COVID-19, looking at children's rights and the SDG goals. COVID-19 has directly impacted goal number 4, which speaks to quality education, which means I am no stranger to this issue. Due to the extent of the crisis, a few nation builders came up with creative ways to host class sessions, and one great example is Ms. McCoy Phipps, who introduced a community blackboard initiatives. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, this example is something that we want to build on to get our children back in it. The Booster Program initiative will benefit students who have not seen a classroom since March 2020, students who have no access to Wi-Fi or device, and those who lack supervision and guidance. Mr. Speaker, we cannot do it alone. We will need support from public and private sector agencies to get the program going. Digital Foundation, UNICEF, and the Universal Service Fund are among the proposed entities. Some schools are now back face-to-face, but how can we help those children who have been disengaged and those who are being left behind? I implore all Jamaicans to work together and invest in our youth education so we can get them back in it.
Thank you, Member Mullins from St. Thomas Western. Members would like to extend apologies on behalf of the Honorable Favour Williams, the Honorable Floyd Green, and the Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, and other distinguished guests who has leave to attend their meetings at Cabinet. We thank you profoundly for their support. Member from Northwestern St. Elizabeth, Francois White.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak on the impact of COVID-19 on the education of marginalized youth. As individuals ranging from the ages 15 to 25 years who, for whatever reason, are denied involvement in mainstream economic, political, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Fellow members of this honorable House, this provides the basis from which to argue on how our marginalized are affected. Very importantly, Mr. Speaker, a student from a prominent high school in a rural constituency for which I represent, Northwestern St. Elizabeth, purchases an education plan from one of our service providers for $500 Jamaican to access online school. Based on the research done on this service provider, Tara will have access to only 17 free e-learning platforms and an additional 500 megabytes for browsing. Mr. Speaker, with only 500 megabytes of data, Tara will only be able to browse the internet for approximately 6 hours per month, or watch 1 hour of online video in standard definition. Mr. Speaker, these e-learning platforms do not offer enough educational materials to excel our marginalized in their studies. What happened to those teachers who have classes on WhatsApp? What happens to the students who really rely on Google search or a YouTube video to better grasp the learning concept? I do not propose that we left any of our marginalized behind. And to that end, Mr. Speaker, we ought to do more to improve the learning outcomes. We are very much aware of the data plan offered by our country's leading technological service providers. We must aim as a country to continue to expand the education plan initiative. That the Ministry of Education and Youth has with the service providers in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and Public Service to engage our local private internet providers alongside with the Universal Service Fund. Mr. Speaker, by expanding this program, we aim to target approximately 2,500 marginalized youth within rural Jamaica. This is in keeping with the government's mandate of universal access by providing sustainable and affordable technological connectivity for our rural youth. The benefits of such initiative will be: one, having our providers going into these rural communities will allow our providers to maximize their reach. Two, by accommodating more subscribers to these networks, respectively, will indeed increase the revenues of our service providers. And three, having connectivity issues solved, Mr. Speaker, will foster uninterrupted live streams for the marginalized youth and by extension the nation's youth. Through this program, we would not only facilitate live stream classes within our deep rural areas, but this move could help our government in the quality assurance of our nation's educators. This will provide a comprehensive overview in the quality of educational materials provided for the nation's youth through digital and printed materials so that the marginalized will have greater access. We must be resolute, ladies and gentlemen, that as a government, moving forward, expanding the education program to tear down these connectivity barriers, as this is a public-private partnership that will provide the development of rural Jamaica. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we can all agree, without connectivity, there can be no real technological productivity. The government pause.
All right, settle down, members, settle down, settle down. The member from Southwest St. Catherine, Julian Nicholson.
Mr. Speaker, all we need is just a chance to show them what we can do. These are the words of a renowned dancehall artist, Massacre. This can be viewed as the voice of our marginalized youth across our nation. They need a chance, Mr. Speaker, to show us what they can do. Today, I stand before this honorable House to speak about the impact of COVID-19 on marginalized youth. In particular, the issues surrounding digital literacy for the ghetto youths then. Today, I stand for them because I have been one of them. Whereas the government in former years would have invested in e-learning preparation, the onset of COVID-19 would have exposed the deficiencies in our nation's remote learning capabilities. That, Mr. Speaker, means that our ability to facilitate distance learning is dangerously in question. Today, I say the problem still exists and needs to be addressed. According to UNESCO's COVID-19 Education Response Paper on the Adverse Effects of School Closure 2020, one of the main impacts of COVID-19 on education is the challenge of creating, maintaining, and improving distance learning. Last year, the Minister of Education and Youth reported that over 120,000 students were absent from online classes. The Honorable Favour Williams in 2020 would have highlighted that only 32% of the nation's student populace were engaged online. Now, Mr. Speaker, these numbers are alarming. I recommend that a policy prescription be drafted where we partner with the Social Development Commission and Corporate Jamaica to put on nationwide digital literacy programs targeting secondary and primary level students. This would be done on a yearly basis. Mr. Speaker, Kenya in 2013 would have employed digital literacy programs similar to what I'm suggesting. The program raised Kenya's global profile as a leader and a hub in ICT. According to the World Bank, Kenya's ICT sector grows an average of 10.8% annually since 2016, and therefore becoming a significant source of economic development and job creation. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want you to follow me. In 2013, they implemented a digital literacy program, and in 2016, they saw 10.8% annual average growth in their ICT sector. The numbers are talking, Mr. Speaker, and Jamaica needs to make a step in that direction. Mr. Speaker, I am not giving you hypothetical ideas pulled out of a hat. These ideas were trailblazed by the youth parliamentarians. We would have reached out to corporate Jamaica, Flow Foundation to be exact, and they partnered with us in providing the opportunity for 63 youths across our nation to be enrolled in a digital literacy course. The course, Skills for the Future, is in collaboration with the Caribbean School of Data, Google, and Microsoft. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a feasible proposal. With the expertise of the SDC and the possibility of approaching corporate sponsors, the aim of bringing our youth to a state of digital literacy is achievable. Like Kenya, we can become an ICT hub and attract exponential economic growth. Mr. Speaker, this is the voice of the marginalized. All we need is just a chance to show them what we can do.
Thank you, the member from Southwest St. Catherine. We'll now have the member from Central Manchester, Josene Brand.
Mr. Speaker, imagine the Ministry of Education and Youth's mantra states that every child can learn and every child must learn. Yet today we are here discussing the very issue of education among our youth that we have stigmatized over the years and deprived them of accessing certain opportunities. Truly, every child can learn, but the question really is every child learning? Prior to COVID-19, based on a survey done by the UNFPA, for every 10 young persons aged 15 to 24, 3 were illiterate. Unattached youth accounts for roughly 30% of the total youth population, more than half only having a maximum grade 9 level education prior to COVID. Since the pandemic, statistics show that more than half of the school population has either partial to no access to a device or no internet, resulting in a significant reduction in attendance to virtual classes. What is our government's solution to this? Let every child have their own device and provide them with internet access. Sure, yet the statistics for attending classes and performance relative remains the same. So what is the issue? Honorable members, if our marginalized youth have the resources, or so we say they do, why is there still an education disconnect? I have 2 hypotheses. 1, our campaign is not effective in reaching out to all our marginalized youth. 2, clearly, we have not considered all the conditions required for an effective teaching and learning experience. Mr. Speaker, this government does not merely make claims based on just online statistics. From personal consultations with residents in my constituency, Manchester Central, 75% of the respondents had devices. However, they also said that if it wasn't for Google, they would have failed their examinations. The remaining express still have not received any devices. Mr. Speaker, this cannot continue. I can stand firmly here and say that it is almost useless if we constantly create initiatives, marking strategies, distribute devices, and give physical resources if our students are not attending classes and point blank, learn nothing. Of course, you can take the horse to the well, but you can't force the horse to drink the water. Something is preventing these or marginalized youth from learning, and we must get to the bottom of it. I propose to rejuvenate and make a few adjustments to a simple, efficient, and free initiative that has proven to work. No fancy name here. Simply a working system with guidance counselors, teachers, and parents to locate and track marginalized students' performance in and out of school. Where do we start? In our schools and right a yard. Needs-based assessments must be conducted, especially in communities where we have seen a reduction in attendance to virtual classes. And we don't just take this information and make statistics and reports. We take the issues and we fix it. With the help of our youth centers in communities, we can locate our students and create an online database system where parents and teachers can keep track of their students' performance. And where do our guidance counselors come in? Statistics show that, sadly, over 600,000 students were being psychologically affected by COVID-19. We have youth who are struggling with depression, a home environment conducive to everything but learning, not to mention having to wonder where the next meal is coming from. Yet we wonder why our marginal youth are not learning. Guidance counselors must be diligent in their duties to make contact and visit our youth who are not attending classes. Again, with our free online database system, guidance counselors with peer counselors, if necessary, will make consultations in communities at least monthly, report back to youth centers and their respective schools, so we know where our youth are, what they are doing, and see how we can help them to get from being on the streets and back to learning. Ignorance can no longer be an excuse not to reach out. Speaker of the House, my fellow parliamentarians and other representatives, let us be intentional, consistent, and held accountable with and for our actions. With these strategies in place, this speaker affirms that every youth can learn and every youth must learn. I thank you.
Thank you to the member from Central Manchester, Josene Brand. The member from St. Thomas Western, Ashage Mullins.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the motion be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The member from Trelawny Northern, Deshaun Cook.
Mr. Speaker, today I will be bringing before the Honourable House the effects of the work-from-home order on domestic violence and child abuse. This House will not only debate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, but also the slew of current strategies being employed by our government to curb such issues. As the nation grapples with the spread of COVID-19, the home that should have been the haven is now left to be the lion's den. So that means, Madam Speaker, nowhere not safe again. So let us assess the facts. Let us dissect the Domestic Violence Act and let us propose policy solutions. According to the National Children's Registry, over 1,000 allegations of sexual abuse were reported for investigation between January and June 2020. While reports fell sharply in April, 82 reports, and May 119 reports, we saw a significant increase to 228 reports in June of that year. Madam Speaker, some may say that it's not a big deal. Some may say that the numbers are padded. However, the reality exists that the resources that many at-risk partners rely on, such as the extended family, childcare, schools, religious groups, and other community organizations are no longer available in many areas. As such, I am putting forward these plans to the Honourable House, which will better sensitize our people to the harm of domestic violence and to the need to treat it as a serious issue. I also speak to the acceleration of existing plans of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport regarding the amendment of the Domestic Violence Act. Madam Speaker, in order to hold our people to a higher standard on the matter of domestic violence, we must ensure that they are fully seized of the dangers. This is better undertaken through the launch of an island-wide sensitization session dubbed FYI. Sensitization and management of public sector workers is merely not enough. We ought to ensure that there's a system in place to track the efficiency and effectiveness of such programs. In the Jamaican context, see I'm blind, hear and deaf. This culture has propelled the narrative of minding your own business. In some instances, our police officers oftentimes don't play the importance and severity of reports that are made regarding domestic violence and child abuse, and our neighbors turn a deafening ear and a blind eye to the problem. I propose that this Honourable House, Madam Speaker, intensifies its public education efforts around domestic violence through schools, workplaces, and active community groups. We are protecting the dollies, Madam Speaker. And of course, the Kendalls, as domestic violence has no gender. Hashtag protect the dolly them. To complement and strengthen the sensitization campaign, we must also ensure that we adequately deter and punish those guilty of the crime. The penalties for breaching this act have been minimal from inception, and it has taken years for our Parliament to review the act. The remedy is to change the 6 months imprisonment or $10,000 fine for the violation of a protection order, as it is not only archaic, but it is not a deterrent to committing the act of domestic violence. In fact, a protection order is only valid for 1 year. Conversely, in the Republic of Barbados, the penalty is approximately 400,000 Jamaican dollars and 1 year imprisonment, or both. So, Madam Speaker, do we really believe that the penalty is enough to ward off perpetrators? What is the message that we're sending with such a menial fine? Madam Speaker, our children are our future. And if they're being robbed of an opportunity to properly develop, what does that mean for Jamaica's long-term development? What is the government going to do to address this? Madam Speaker, the issues are right in front of us, and it is time to act, and we need to act now. In order to achieve Vision 2030, we must preserve our future. And if we want to evolve, domestic violence in all its forms and child abuse must stop. Thank you.
Member from Western Westmoreland, Anthony Beckford.
Madam Speaker, imagine the constant image of death, the lonesome feeling of isolation, the everlasting paranoia of fear. Madam Speaker, today you, me, and all other members can choose to stop imagining this. However, this remains the reality of 1 in 3 women worldwide and 1 in 4 Jamaicans who are forced to work from home and continues to grapple with domestic violence amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. The work from home order has exacerbated a surge in domestic violence against women and children. Even more detrimental is that now the victims are relegated to confinements into households with these perpetrators. According to the Jamaican Gleaner, just 9 days ago, the resounding headline was domestic violence increases amidst the pandemic. Madam Speaker, if we are not a part of the solution, then automatically we become a part of our problem. So let us act today with no delay. On this premise, I offer the recommendation that we, 1, allocate more human and financial resources to implement the Domestic Violence Action Plan. There is a need, Madam Speaker, for an increase in the number of shelters. Madam Speaker, the domestic violence intervention centers we currently have will require a new outlook and a more strategic approach. Now, through partnerships with the Center of Investigation of Sexual Offences and Child Abuse, SOCA, DVI centers can achieve more than just being an establishment where crimes are reported. Madam Speaker, now is the time that we must give credence to strengthening social intervention plans. For example, the creation of more conflict resolution sessions and first-time parenting classes. These sessions will be conducted by trained professionals such as child psychologists and social workers of SISOCA. The benefit is that these trained counselors will work with the victims in collecting the reports. For far too long, Madam Speaker, have our victims' cries have fallen on deaf ears. These reports should then, Madam Speaker, be transferred to the JCF members of the Domestic Violence Unit, who will then conduct the investigation. I propose, Madam Speaker, that we also give adequate follow-ups to be done after victims receive this counseling to strengthen the accountability and monitor the holistic development of our victims. Madam Speaker, the Spotlight Initiative has invested €8 million over 3 years on a range of efforts to reduce family violence. The funding is a partnership with the European Union and the Jamaican government. Its limitation, Madam Speaker, is that it will only encompass 4 parishes. Today, Madam Speaker, the NYPs of this Honourable House are calling on the other non-government organizations and the private sector to not only afford 4, but all 14 parishes access to strengthened law and policy institutions that will aid in the delivery of necessary services. So, Madam Speaker, let us act today with no delay. The idea here is that long-term efforts through strategic, collaborative and innovative approaches will mitigate the rising occurrences of violence towards our people. Finally, Madam Speaker, laws govern our nation. And if we are to tackle domestic violence at its core, we must make the necessary amendments to these laws that so that they can eradicate the negative perceptions that too many perpetrators still hold. The Domestic Violence Act does not acknowledge domestic violence within the scope of sexual abuse and does not lead to physical abuse, emotional abuse, or financial abuse, which should all be considered acts of domestic violence. Madam Speaker, we need to speed up the legislative review process proposed by the Honourable Minister Grange, which would widen the scope of domestic violence to improve the outcomes that have been negatively affecting our citizens. An added issue is the framing of the domestic violence, where the Domestic Violence Act, though amended in 2004, still does not define domestic violence in and of itself, which leaves it open to interpretations. Madam Speaker, we can remedy this by the acceleration of the amendment of the Act to reflect a clear definition that would prevent any form of ambiguity. Madam Speaker, this solution lies within the hands of the government, as they have the power and the authority to effect change through proactive political will and effective action. We can't overemphasize enough. No more delays. Let's act today.
Thank you, Member Beckford. We'll now have a member from Southeastern St. Catherine, Carol Thorpe.
Madam Speaker, as the COVID-19 pandemic forced us all to stay inside to avoid contracting the virus, it inevitably strengthened other threats. Can you imagine, Madam Speaker, and members of this Honourable House, the horrible, tragic situation that has affected our country even before the pandemic? Domestic violence and child abuse especially. Today, Madam Speaker, important facts and strategies that I am convinced will help in lowering and eliminating these challenges will be presented. Child abuse refers to any act or failure to act on the part of the parent or guardian that results in any serious physical, emotional, or sexual trauma, according to the National Children's Registry. Madam Speaker, allow me to enlighten you with some startling statistics. According to the Jamaica Gleaner in 2020, there were 1,091 documented charges of emotional abuse in 2019 versus 1,172 in 2020. Mrs. Diane Gordon Harrison of the Jamaica's Children's Advocate claims in an April 2021 article that there was a 76% decline in reports to her office from May 2019 to May 2020. According to Mrs. Rosalie Gage Gray, Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, reports around 10,000 cases of child abuse were reported in 2020, with sexual abuse accounting for 20% of these reports. Winshay Barrett, Phyllis Pressure, Gabriel King, Tony Ann Reed, Jasmine Dean, Canice Jackson, and Jocelyn Gordon. What do these names mean? Their deaths and disappearances over the previous 22 months have underlined the fact that sexual assault in Jamaica has no regard for age, with one victim being 78 years old and another being a mere 15 years old, with one of these occurrences happening in 2022. Madam Speaker, I submit to this Honourable House that greater community policing is vital, including increasing the number of police patrols in communities and strengthening the JCF's Community Safety and Security Branch, which allows them to help when needed. As a result of working alongside the police and the justices of the peace, citizens will be able to establish trust with law enforcement, making it easier to file a report in the future promptly. Furthermore, after a rapport is built, do not fully reassign members. Instead, roster them, allowing the community additional time to become acquainted with the new faces. The government has also recently established the Report Child Abuse Hotline, which may be accessed at 211. I beseech you, Jamaica, to please take advantage of it. Madam Speaker, the government must mobilize agencies widely used by parents and guardians, such as clinics and schools, as well as digital and traditional means, to educate them about the aforementioned difficulties and how to impose discipline as soon as possible. They must be educated and supported by social workers, psychologists, and guidance counselors on how to spot and prevent these challenges, as well as assist as needed to better protect their children, as danger is not always a stranger. To bolster my case, Madam Speaker, various provisions in the Offences Against Persons Act, Sections 28 and 29, pertaining to homicide, makes abandoning children under the age of 2 a criminal offense. Why is abandoning a child under the age of 2 only a federal crime? Isn't abandoning a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old child illegal? Additional improvements and measures are also required to strengthen the assault charges against minors and the murder of an infant. Allow males to be tried and convicted of not just assaulting minors, but also murdering an infant. Why is the charge for assault on a child or a woman in 2022 just 2,000 Jamaican dollars? In the current condition of our failing economy, that is chump change. How can that meager quantity of money demonstrate any sorrow for the heinous action? I strongly advise boosting this minute sum by at least 10,000%, bringing it to 200,000 Jamaican dollars. This shift would considerably have more ramifications than the current sliver of money. Madam Speaker, Jean McLeave posited, you can recognize survivors of abuse by their courage. When silence is so very inviting, they step forward and share their truth so that others will know they aren't alone.
Thank you, Ms. Thorpe. We now have the member from Eastern St. Thomas, Othniel Lamy.
Madam Speaker, honorable members of this noble house, I greet you well. On the 10th of March 2020, Madam Speaker, the dreadful coronavirus made a landing on the Jamaican shores. And ever since then, all attentions and efforts have been directed to slowing down and possibly stopping the spread of this virus, turning a blind eye to the nationwide pandemic that has been in existence long before COVID-19, namely crime, domestic violence, and child abuse. And even though the virus had us all being socially distant, these issues seem to have never been closer. I, Othniel Lamy, Youth Member of Parliament for Eastern St. Thomas, recognize these issues and would like to posit a zero tolerance for each. Madam Speaker, my fellow colleagues, let me turn your attention to some troubling statistics. Now, Jamaica has approximately 2.9 million people, and women account for only 50% of our population, which means about 1.45 million women are in this country. Let me hasten to add, Madam Speaker, that according to a research carried out by the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, it has been proven that 1 in every 4 women experience some form of abuse. That means within our Jamaican borders, within these 14 parishes, are at least 58,000 women undergoing abuse. And while this number may be small in comparison to the population at large, still we, the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica 2021, Madam Speaker, wants this number to be reduced all the way down to 0. COVID-19 has brought about some new changes which we classify as our new normal, one of which is the work from home, which helps with the mitigation of the spread of the virus, but it also served as the birth of the rise in cases of domestic violence against women and children. As for children, the rise in instances concerning them have been quite obvious. Parents are now working from home, hence being in and around our spaces more often, inflicting abuse on the children, the treasure of our nation. What we need to do, Madam Speaker, is to invest in already existent programs, develop them, and allow them to matriculate to becoming the solution to the child abuse happening within our country. It needs to stop now. CPFSA held a one-day program in 2017 in Bath St. Thomas to assist in the communication skills at the community level. Now, instead of a one-day program, why not host several programs over longer periods of time to ensure that the behavior is truly affected? The National Parenting Commission has a very effective program, which I believe can be way more effective if invested in and developed in the right way. Now, we glance back in 2018, where this program, a parent mentorship program, was seen to have proven to help parents with their parenting skills, which weren't being implemented prior to this and allowed situations to escalate and resulting in more abuses. Now, the question is, why not make this nationwide? How about we engage and meet with TV production? How about we write to them, submit proposals? How about we Tell them about this parent mentorship program in the form of a TV show where families can tune in from all across the island and benefit from tips being given by family counselors, communication strategists, and other professionals in the field, which will ultimately result in a decrease in domestic violence against women and children. Without the shadow of a doubt, something of this great magnitude and necessity can't be resisted, and as stated before, will go on to mitigate the cases as stated before. Quite too often we hear of crime in the news. Criminals are still showing us that they can still steal lives, steal livelihood, steal potential, possession, and power, while we who possess it are using this pandemic as an excuse to procrastinate addressing this issue. Like I said, it needs to stop now. What we need to do is increase the security forces, take Jamaica Eye to the next level, purchase and install more cameras in the cities, towns, all over this island, and eliminate every person who feels they have the right to take the life of another. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I'd like to close with the quote of our very own Governor General, His Excellency Sir Patrick Allen. I believe there is nothing wrong with Jamaica that cannot be fixed by what is right with Jamaica. If we join hands and hearts, our efforts can inextricably be linked to making Dream 2030 a reality. And we should all know this by now like a poem, shan't we? It says, to make Jamaica the place to live, work, raise families, and do business. Make we fix Jamaica. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laming. Member from Trelawney Northern, Mr. Cook.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. We now invite the member from Clarendon South Western, Andre Barrett.
Madam Speaker, I ask your permission to speak from a seat not of my own.
Yes, Mr. Barrett.
I ask your permission to speak from a seat not of my own.
That's okay.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, as we grapple with the effects of the global pandemic in this present day, it is paramount that we safeguard our future. The problem I choose to focus on is the underdevelopment of rural schools and the disengagement of our students. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused marginalized youth across the nation to miss out on critical academic growth. This is seen in an assessment conducted by my colleagues and I, revealing that many rural students have been detached from online learning, and 15% of students who were online have been using their devices for non-academic purposes. The result of this has been low performance in external exams, especially STEM subjects. Additionally, Madam Speaker, with the mandate to resume face-to-face classes, though it is commendable, it fails to address the resource inequities and implementation deficits in rural areas. So what is the solution, Madam Speaker? In light of these realities, this House proposes two measures. Firstly, a new diagnostic testing for our marginalized youth. The diagnostic testing schemes will be aimed at three main groups of students. Students in grades 4 to 6, students in first form and fourth to sixth formers as a means to strengthen preparation for upcoming exams and fill academic gaps that have developed during the pandemic. Upon the return to face-to-face learning, we expect that these tests to be conducted by the teachers will garner the knowledge that students currently have and see the topics that require much needed attention. These tests should gauge the skill sets that have been lacking within our schools and point teachers into a more targeted approach in teaching methods and topics being taught. We expect that this data will help to develop targeting teaching methods. We will see the 41% passes gradually improve to acceptable levels within the next 2 academic years. All we need is the government to mandate it. Nothing they can't handle. Secondly, the launch of the Integrated Post-Pandemic Advancement Digitization Project, iPad. The country needs a new iPad. This proposal is to annually increase the capital allocation to digitize schools, targeted mainly to our rural schools, which have been underfunded for many years. The digitization program would feature more computer labs in our primary and secondary schools, as well as digitized libraries. Now, the opposition may come with the argument that funds are not there or the taxpayers will have to bear the burden. Well, let me educate this House on budget mechanics. It can be funded by public-private partnerships, which is in line with the fiscal rationalization program started by the government of Jamaica since 2008 and have yielded successes through various projects since independent Jamaica, such as Rockford Power Plant and the highways. So then time, it no must can work. These allocations will ensure that our rural schools will approach equity with their urban counterparts in regards to resources, and our schools in general are ready to confidently approach Vision 2030 and be prepared for the real digital change that is to come. Honorable House, as I conclude this speech, I beseech our leaders to think keenly on these plans put forward and move swiftly in implementation. For whilst our students have been fueled with apathy towards education, it is your action that will determine the path of our future leaders. Do right by our children. Do right by the future. Do right by us. I rest.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We now have Javine Brown, member from Eastern Westmoreland.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I stand here today to discuss the need for rural development and a paradigm shift. Madam Speaker, the time is now. As the popular DJ Yaxter said, farming over flossing and investments over brothing. These are tenets we understand and hold dear on this side of the House. Madam Speaker, the opposition does not intend to dispute the viability of farming. However, the approach that the government has put forward has failed, and the investments in agriculture have proven not. This is clearly shown, Madam Speaker, with the continuous increase of chicken prices, the impending increase of flour prices, the volatility of our vegetable market, and the inability of a medical marijuana holder to access a business account. Madam Speaker, Sustainable Development Goal 2 speaks to ending hunger, achieving food security, and improving nutrition and promoting sustainable agriculture. It is our intention to meet these goals through improvements on several areas of Vision 2030. According to the World Bank, the agriculture and tourism sectors have the most significant potential for rural growth and development because of their overall importance to the economy. Madam Speaker, promoting modern agricultural technologies and practices boosted agricultural productivity by as much as 50 to 400% and increased farm incomes by 5 to 10 times. Madam Speaker, what we need to invest in is vertical farming and marijuana tourism. Let's look at vertical farming for instance. Madam Speaker, vertical farming is revolutionary and can be used to change and bolster the agricultural landscape in Jamaica. Bear in mind, Madam Speaker, that vertical farming requires the use of less resources in comparison to traditional farming techniques. To go further, it uses 85% less water, less chemicals, and promotes greater environmentally sustainable practices. When done on a large scale, it is cost-effective and provides opportunities for individuals in rural communities. Research conducted by verticalfarmlife.com shows that a 30-foot structure encompassing 1 acre can produce the same level of produce as 2,400 acres of horizontal farming. Enough land that, you know. Madam Speaker, it has been proven to work, even in countries like India, with the company AS Agri and Aqua LLP being a working example of this. Madam Speaker, now let's examine the marijuana sector. Investment in the sector can provide substantial benefits to Jamaica. How do I know this, Madam Speaker? Well, Travel Pulse in 2019 stated that Jamaica could be the king of marijuana tourism if you were to capitalize on the marijuana market. Jamaica is known worldwide as one of the marijuana hotspots, despite it not being legalized for recreational use. Madam Speaker, a prime example on how we can capitalize on the marijuana sector has been seen in the state of Colorado, where in 2019, after legalizing recreational marijuana, they were able to generate $309 million to inject into the local economy. Madam Speaker, if this sector is economically viable, then the question may be asked, why are we not capitalizing on this huge market and taking full advantage of the economic boost that it could provide? If we were to legalize the product, the economy can benefit from taxation of this as well, and we know the government will collect the money. As a lifelong advocate for marijuana legalization, this is something I'd avidly support. Madam Speaker, when it's not high banking fees, it is archaic practices. Can you imagine that the banking sector of Jamaica currently does not do any business at all with individuals associated with marijuana due to stigma that is attached to this product in 2022? Madam Speaker, if Jamaica refuses to change, we will be left in the dirt. Madam Speaker, let's remind this Honorable House that if we only invest in the marijuana sector by legalizing recreational use, this will make it easier to procure a license for the average individual production, in accordance with international standards, of course, for the legalization of recreational marijuana. This, as well as the implementation of vertical farming to make effective use of land space, can be the way forward for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Brown. We will now have a member from Manchester Central, Kelly D. Bailey.
Madam Speaker, the slogan of the Ministry of Education and Youth is, "Every child can learn and every child must learn." This slogan has only seemed to apply to the young people in urban areas, in middle-income communities, and above during this pandemic. I stand today to address the problem that has constantly been the elephant in the room. Rural development and the need for a paradigm shift. With the onset of COVID-19, the learning loss in these rural communities has been enormous. There is a need for a strategic response so that these students' prospects are not irreparably damaged. We need to act now. According to the Education Act of 1980, each child should be given an equal chance at education. This pandemic has proven to be a great challenge for the constituency of Manchester Central. At the beginning of my tenure as a youth parliamentarian, we were given a chance to explore the various divisions within the constituency. The issues of connectivity and access to online classes were more prevalent in the Belfield division. Findings from the research carried out in the Belfield division from a population of 15,000 people revealed that 50 to 60% of the population were young people between the ages of 3 to 18, which is the standard school age. Since the onset of the virus in 2020, a large portion of this population of young people have not been able to properly access education in the last 2 years. The findings were conclusive that, 1, internet connectivity is very low in the area because of the terrain, and 2, the lack of devices, laptops, tablets, smartphones. Imagine, Madam Speaker, in the Belfield division, there is only one high school, and our findings show that of a class of 50 students, only 10 typically show up online, primarily due to the internet connectivity challenges. Madam Speaker, we can do something about it, and I come to offer a solution to address the challenge. The solution is to improve the effectiveness of access points in rural communities, especially those with very hilly terrains. I call it Connect Me Too. This program has 3 parts. 1, retargeting of rural areas as priority for the funding available through the Universal Service Fund to improvements in the implementation or setup of access points. 2, the government should partner with the private sector organizations, such as telecommunications providers, Flow and Digicel, to expand the connectivity within these areas. This can work. We can target these low-income households and increase the subscriber base by providing more low-cost home and entertainment packages for data and Wi-Fi. With the government, through the Universal Service Fund and the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, funding can be reallocated to subsidize these data packages. Imagine having a tablet and no internet connectivity because I live in Waitabit Trelawney or Balaclava St. Elizabeth. This is pointless. Third solution, the increase of accessibility to teaching technologies, i.e., learning management systems offered to teachers to improve the differentiated learning techniques to target all groups of students based on their learning styles and taking into action their socio-economic background. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I agree with Professor Orlando Patterson and the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission that unless affirmative action is taken to address the negative pandemic impact on COVID-19 of disadvantaged students, then this extreme inequality will be further exacerbated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. We now have a member from East Rural St. Andrew, Rashid Martin.
Madam Speaker, members of the Honorable House, good morning. I rise to put forward the motion of rural development and the need for a paradigm shift. Traditionally, when we think about rural areas, farms, lush vegetation, and unfortunately, underdevelopment and poverty come to mind. As such, we constantly see mass migration into our urban areas of people trying to find opportunities for themselves and their families. Unfortunately, many will come to the realization that the soil is not so rich on this side of Jamaica and the opportunities are even scarcer. The reality is, Madam Speaker, we have been undermining the importance of rural development and the impact it can have on our economy and the lives of all Jamaicans. The World Bank highlighted that with the development of rural areas, poverty levels fell from 22% to 15.3% within these areas in 2009. Imagine if we should heavily invest in the overall development of rural areas. Yes, we will see a steady decline in poverty and a steady increase in the standard of living of our people. Therefore, Madam Prime Minister, I ask the government to consider the following. We need a strong legislation to protect and identify lands to be used for only agricultural purposes. There is no doubt that agriculture is a major income generator for many people living within rural areas. However, our prime agricultural lands are at risk of being destroyed to mining and housing development. This piece of legislation will ensure that there are lands dedicated to the continuation and improvement of the agricultural sector of Jamaica. Additionally, the legislation will seek to protect large and small-scale farmers from any forms of commercial exploitation that may arise for the purchasing of these lands. Subsequently, in protecting these lands, we can guarantee a long-term income generation for families who depend heavily on the sector to survive. And this will also stimulate growth within our economy. Members, rural development is a necessity. Madam Speaker, our rural areas are not only bushlands. They are ripe with many opportunities for growth and serious development. Members, I believe it is time for us to direct possible investors to areas that need it the most. With an investment and introduction of island-wide agritourism, call centers, banks, agri-processing, and other small businesses will not just guarantee a reduction in poverty, but we will see a reduction in crime. Without a doubt, Madam Speaker, we need to ensure that our investors are interested. As such, a special economic zone should be established in these rural areas to attract and maintain them. Most importantly, Madam Speaker, we on this side of the House want a more equitable distribution of funds from the Constituency Development Fund, especially for constituencies that have little to no development. One way we can achieve equity is to look at the size, average wealth and the poverty rate of each constituency. Then we can allocate the distributions based on the data gathered. Members, it is time for the rural constituencies in St. Thomas and as far as Hanover to show us their true economic strength. And this, Madam Speaker, is the way to do it. As I close, rural development should not only be on paper, but we should ensure that all possible options are tried in order to see sustainable development for all. As such, it is important for us to implement strong legislation that will identify and protect farmlands across the country and finally encourage massive investment in rural areas. Once again, I say rural development is a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Martin. Member Barrett.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Member Xavier McFarlane from Westmoreland Central.
Madam Speaker, 1 John 2 verse 14 says, I have written unto you, young men, because ye are strong.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the generally familiar notion is that the youth of Jamaica are full of strength, ideas, passion, and agility. But the question before us today is how can these youth show their strength if they do not have adequate funding and support? It is for this reason, Mr. Speaker, that we propose to focus today on the problem facing youth clubs across the country. There is the limitation and or non-existence of the availability of funding for youth clubs standing as a pressing issue. Mr. Speaker, results from my consultations with developing youth clubs in my county depicts that there exists a limitation in the intervention by the government regarding their developmental affairs in order for them to be better equipped to reach more youth with charity programs, webinars, or seminars, amongst other pivotal projects and developmental programs. Mr. Speaker, there exist youth clubs that are drowning but are still trying to empower youth. And I contend, Mr. Speaker, that this government should stand to rescue those clubs. I therefore recommend that there be a development of a youth empowerment fund put in reserve for emerging or developed youth clubs in each constituency by the respective members of parliament to assure the club's longevity, success, and development. How can this be done, Mr. Speaker? In Jamaica, there exists a constituency development fund. This fund seeks to improve the effectiveness of members of parliament as a designated funding mechanism for constituency projects. The main thrust of this fund is to promote human and infrastructure development at the community and constituency levels through the establishment of sustainable development projects. Mr. Speaker, I am therefore proposing that the government steers its focus on youth development through youth clubs by allocating 10% of the Constituency Development Fund into the Youth Empowerment Fund annually. I further recommend, Mr. Speaker, that the Youth Empowerment Fund be administered by the Ministry of Education and Youth. Mr. Speaker, this fund will be nothing less than fundamental to the development of youth clubs, as this fund will, 1, serve as a catalyst for youth clubs to gain funding through application to execute projects, initiate and maintain programs that will reach youth across the length and breadth of Jamaica. It will pose as a curbing instrument that will rectify the issue of decreasing youth clubs in Jamaica, as evidence suggests, Mr. Speaker, that there exists a 70% decline in the number of youth clubs island-wide since 1998. And there will inevitably be possibilities of further decline in the absence of immediate intervention. So, Mr. Speaker, we have acknowledged that the adequate funding for the youth clubs is a monstrosity of a problem, and I contend that this fund will be the immediate intervention. This fund will be the saving grace of youth clubs, and by extension, the master of youth development. Mr. Speaker, in the words of Mr. Fuller, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Today, Mr. Speaker, I can unflinchingly declare that the National Youth Parliament of Jamaica's youth parliamentarians are making a new model for youth development as we move in the vision, oh yes, the vision, to make Jamaica a better place to live, to work, raise families, and
thank you to the member from Westmoreland Central, Xavier McFarlane. Now, members of this honorable House, we now pause to acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Alanda Terrelog, MP and the State Minister in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports. The member from Hanover Western, Sharice Williams.
There's no light here now. Mic check.
Mr. Speaker, I draw to the attention of this honorable House the vision of the National Youth Policy. And I quote, all Jamaican youth realizing their full potential through access to opportunities to develop, participate, and contribute as responsible citizens to sustainable national development, end quote. Mr. Speaker, for this vision to be realized, where youth can achieve holistic development through access to opportunities and uphold holistic development, we must address the inequalities that exist in development. For far too long, this country has been sluggish in its infrastructural and technological development that continues to have a negative impact on the engagement of our youths. Mr. Speaker, findings from the 2017 research undertaken by the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division highlighted poor infrastructure is one of the key factors that is impacting youth participation, as very little is being done to redevelop and rehabilitate spaces such as youth clubs and community centers. To make matters worse, as my member has highlighted earlier, 70% decline in the youth clubs since 1998. Mr. Speaker, have we forgotten the importance of youth development? I am led to believe that the allocation of funding that is essential to the development of youth spaces are little to none. Given this reality, Mr. Speaker, I suggest to this honorable House that the government reassess its current budget allocations to facilitate the development of youth clubs and community centers. Equipping these youth spaces with effective technological infrastructure, they will act as a haven for our youth while exposing them to the opportunities that are essential to personal development and civic responsibility. Mr. Speaker, we often hear of millions and billions being allocated to a host of programs, and based on the rationale that is given, it is important to national development. But I ask this question: what about the youths in Hanover? Where is the allocation of funds for youths in Westmoreland, St. Mary? Mr. Speaker, I appeal to this honourable House. More can be done, and more needs to be done. What is being observed is that due to the absence of youth engagement programs that would have been facilitated in these spaces, our young men, especially our boys, according to the JCF crime report, between the ages of 14 to 17 are being recruited into gangs and other criminal activities. 40% of them are known murderers, while 15 to 24 are 16% of the murdered victims. This echoes the need for more engagement of our youth. Mr. Speaker, to accelerate the process of re-engaging our youth, following up to the reallocation of funds to technological development for our youths, I propose a revamp of the Charge Up project with a program dubbed Ignite the Youths. This initiative, Mr. Speaker, will see the implementation of diverse strategies to engage our youth using this pandemic as an opportunity to deliver in person and online. Mr. Speaker, it will incorporate components such as business development training, proposal writing, literacy, financial literacy, to equip them with the necessary skills for this global workforce. Mr. Speaker, money is often cited as an issue, but I propose that we use the corporate and social responsibility, target our private sectors, stakeholders such as Digicel, Edufocal, NCB, to ensure that these programs are funded. Mr. Speaker, as I close, we do not need to reinvent the wheel for youth development. What we need is commitment and consistency. Commitment and consistency in our approach to the changes necessary to advance youth development, to produce responsible citizens according to this vision of the National Youth Policy, so that our youths can contribute to Vision 2030. Thank you.
Thank you to the member from Hanover Western, Sharice Williams. We'll now take the member from St. Mary Western, Javon Ling.
Mr. Speaker, if you have any vision at all, the decline of youth development opportunities, in particular, the decrease in the number of youth clubs in Jamaica, should be on your mind. Now, for us to find the solution to this problem, we must first understand what youth development is. According to the National Alliance for Secondary Education, youth development is defined as a process that prepares a young person to meet the challenges of adolescence, adulthood, to achieve his or her full potential. Youth development is promoted through activities and experiences that help youth to harness social, ethical, emotional, physical, and cognitive competencies. Now, Mr. Speaker, according to the Ministry of Education and Youth, since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a decline of approximately 50% in the number of functioning youth clubs across the country. In all likelihood, there is a possibility for a further decline unless we have immediate and sustained intervention. the potential for further decline could result in the possible loss of all key intervention points for reaching or at-risk youth. This is not an outcome we want to see, Mr. Speaker. With the continuity of an absence in the availability of clear governance structure and coordination of support for youth clubs, a change in trend seems quite unlikely. Mr. Speaker, I'm not just here to cast scrutiny, but I come bearing solutions. This is a parliamentary sitting of solutions. I am proposing that the government give studied consideration to giving more budgetary and technical support to the National Youth Council of Jamaica. The government should also move to provide greater capacity building of youth clubs through the National Youth Council under the campaign trademark YCSP, Youth Club Strengthening Program. This campaign will contribute to more effective capacity building workshops, thus enabling better functioning youth clubs that can meet the needs of our young people. Youth clubs will now operate more effectively and be better able to do succession planning. The goal here, Mr. Speaker, is to establish a network of youth clubs that are built to last. Upon completion of their aforementioned program, clubs will possess the requisite knowledge on how to maintain their internal structure, thereby greasing disbursement of grants from the Ministry of Education and Youth. As my colleagues have been stressing during this sitting, all our youth need is a chance. How do we achieve this? Mr. Speaker, I'm not proposing that we reinvent the wheel. Instead, I propose that we revamp existing programs that are aimed at promoting youth development opportunities. A program like the Charge Up project that was mentioned, this was implemented in 2017 as a mechanism for revitalizing Jamaica's youth club movement. This project allowed youth clubs across Jamaica to apply for grants of $30,000 to facilitate community development projects through the government. Let us act now and restart this program. Another program we should turn our attention to is the LEGS program, Learn to Earn, Give, Save program, that was implemented in 2016. This program involved youth in training, volunteerism, and encouraged saving. The LEGS program is currently in operation today, but I call for an increase in allocation of funding to allow the program to have more extensive effects on our youth and our beloved country, Jamaica. A lack of resources shouldn't be the reason we lose a generation of bright, talented, and gifted minds. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if you're aware of these slangs, but I'm an industry youth. I'm among my peers, and when I go into my constituencies and I ask my colleagues, why is it that you are actively involved in youth clubs? Their responses all fall along the same line. Me not feel the vibe or it not push. Mr. Speaker, a full time we make the youth development thing push. Let us open our eyes. Let us open the eyes of our young people and show them that being involved is wise. Being involved is important. Being involved have a buzz. Mr. Speaker, let us do all we can to engage the youth of Jamaica to get more involved in worthwhile activities which will secure for them a more stable and productive future. This push starts with the greater investment in youth development opportunities. The time is now. The time for investing in the youth is always now. I leave with a quote from the recording artist Marksman. Stop going like you don't notice. You notice that the implementation of these policies will be of benefit to the nation's youth. Thank you.
Thank you to the member from St. Mary Western, Mr. Javon Ling. We'll now have the member from South St. James, Truston Grizzle.
Mr. Speaker, there seems to be a continuous dilly-dallying about what solutions are best to alleviate the issue of crime. But let's understand that if there is a high number of unattached youth, that poses a danger to the rest of us as Jamaicans. This is because while you may understand the importance of gainful employment and why it is important for you to live your life in such a way that you gain your bread by honest means, that's not the state of the minds of most of our unattached youth. This is detrimental because your life, my life, our lives may very well be cut short as a result of the proverbial devil finding work for idle hands. Therefore, one of the best social reform policies we can effect is to ensure that once youth are not gainfully employed or enrolled in educational institutions, they must be engaged in youth clubs. But frankly, Mr. Speaker, we cannot tell the unattached youth to engage in youth clubs when we don't have enough youth clubs in the first place. So what are the proposed solutions to getting more youth clubs across the country? While some youth may have the resources and wherewithal to accomplish starting a youth club in their communities, that's not the reality for most individuals. Take myself, for example. I've always wanted the members of my constituency of South St. James to enjoy the benefits of being a part of a youth club. However, this has unfortunately not become a reality. Some may argue that individuals like myself and some members who are present here today, who have been quality products of rural communities, only experience this because of the privileges of a capable family. But why is our holistic development dependent on privilege? This is totally unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. Consequently, we must fully utilize the system that trains young people with techniques to form youth clubs, draft business plans for these clubs, inform community members of what they need to register a club, and most importantly, how to transform youth clubs into social enterprises. Now hear me, Mr. Speaker. Social enterprises that are formed out of youth clubs are a big deal. This is because they create partnerships with entities such as the University of West Indies' Social Entrepreneurship Program. They generate profits to sustain the clubs given their independent nature. They fund social projects and provide employment opportunities for our unattached youth. Creating another initiative is not the answer. In fact, sustainability is key. We must work twice as hard to ensure that after the implementation of the project, its integrity and progress is prolonged. This calls for proper planning and structural or capacity building. We must ensure that there are individuals who are trained and ready to take over from the leaders of these clubs, because sustainability is key. The reality is, those who are leading youth clubs, they may one day move on. But what then? Do the youth clubs die because the leaders have moved on? That is impermissible, Mr. Speaker. Jamaica has some of the most brilliant minds. So let us have more youth empowerment officers deployed into communities to oversee the efficient running of youth clubs. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of funding might pose a significant challenge to the sustainability of youth clubs. And since youth clubs are primarily independent and comprised of individuals who are volunteering their time, energy, and effort to these initiatives, it is the opposition's recommendation to the government that the Ministry of Education and Youth employ and deploy more youth empowerment officers to partner with youth clubs and provide more resources to ensure their efficiency. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we don't have no resources, nothing can go on. But, Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate that if no other solution seems feasible, we must seek to transform youth clubs into social enterprises. Mr. Speaker, throughout this presentation, I have shown to the House how youth clubs play an integral role in the holistic development of the youth, that these organizations suffer from a lack of structural and capacity building and a lack of resources. But thankfully, these can all be changed by utilizing more empowerment officers, soliciting partial funding from the Ministry of Education and Youth, and making more resources available to youth clubs. Mr. Speaker, members of this Honourable House, if we need community change, if we need parochial change, if we need societal change, more youth clubs are needed.
Thank you to the member from South St. James, Truston Grizzle. We now have the member from Westmoreland Central, Xavier McFarlane.
Mr. Speaker, I now move that the motion be agreed to.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I now move for the recommittal of the item, statements by ministers.
The question is that the item, statements by ministers, be recommitted. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Statements by minister. We now welcome the Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, and members of this Honourable House, before I go on to my address, let us look on both sides of the aisle. Do you see what I see today? Today, we have two female leaders on either side.
Members, please settle down.
Moment, and let us again celebrate this moment. Let me also pause to congratulate the distinguished members of my cabinet and the worthy members of the opposition on achieving this great milestone. No make nobody belittle your accomplishment. As Spice would say, it's a big thing. It's a big moment. This has been a memorable journey, one filled with creating meaningful impact, but also one filled with obstacles. But Mr. Speaker, this Honourable House may have been delayed, but never denied. As Massacre rightfully said, all when we wings them broken, we still fly. I want to thank the Ministry of Education and Youth, particularly the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division. Thank you to the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, especially our beloved co-chairs, the facilitators, the staff of the Houses of Parliament, and the staff of the Pegasus Hotel for their hospitality. We also thank all those who weren't mentioned here, but who contributed to the success of this sitting. At this juncture, Mr. Speaker, I must reinforce the issues that were highlighted and excellently presented today. You have heard the propositions of our youth parliamentarians on crime and violence during COVID-19, youth development opportunities or the lack thereof, rural development, and the impact of COVID-19 on the education of the marginalized youth. Mr. Speaker, if we want our youth to evolve and unlock their truest potential, stakeholders, we need to play our part in advancing the welfare of all our nation's youth. Deputy Prime Minister, I can tell you that domestic violence and child abuse are more trending than the dolly them on Twitter. This, Mr. Speaker, is an issue that we cannot afford to continue. Little Sasha is crying out. Little Bob is crying out. Government of Jamaica, can't you hear their cries? Essentially, what we ask is for you to come, make we hashtag SDY, save the youths. Since the advent of COVID-19, many of the most vulnerable children are left without the key to success. We need no statistics to believe this, as we are very much aware of it. We see it online, we see it in the newspapers, we see it in our communities, and many of us are victims. The members of this honorable house highlighted earlier that this pandemic has manifested the failure of the system to account for the vulnerable groups. The harsh reality is, John and the other penny them will live behind a God back cannot be left behind any longer. Today, this honorable house wants you to remember the student who sits at the back of the classroom and is nervous to speak, the one who depends on another student to ask a question. We want you to remember the class clown that depends on attention to have confidence to continue his studies. But when we have a classroom online, where nobody opens their microphone or even their cameras, and there's the lack of that inside joke that cements the lesson, what happens, Mr. Speaker, to our most vulnerable children in that classroom? Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, they are the ones that got lost in that classroom after being left with a lengthy PowerPoint to read. But this honorable house believes that that status quo is not the way to go. We call on the government of Jamaica to provide more equitable and sustainable access to quality technology, as well as access to technological devices and the development of a disability-friendly software. Our youth education is a main priority, and so we call for reallocation of funding from the Education Ministry. Mr. Speaker, youth clubs are vital to youth development. But Mr. Speaker, how can youth be fully developed at these youth clubs when there is no money for the execution and sustainability of projects? Mr. Speaker, many of us in this honorable house can relate that we are involved in clubs. But these may never be effective because all we can do is come up with ideas. They can never be executed. We don't have the money. Youth clubs are lacking, but what is really lacking is the availability of funding for these youth clubs. Money is of paramount importance to any organization. Proverbs 29 and verse 18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. But Mr. Speaker, I say, where there is no money, youth clubs perish. We therefore call for funding to be sourced from the Ministry of Education and Youth and reallocated from ministries to set up more grants for youth development through youth clubs. Mr. Speaker, on the other hand,
rural development is an infrastructural and monetary development problem. Imagine the rural community of Brompton, located in the southern Trelawney, with a community center that is so run down that it poses a threat to the safety of our youth. Youth development can stem from rural development, but Mr. Speaker, in the community of Brompton, this cannot happen. The Brompton Community Center had the potential of hosting educational sessions for our youth, basic medical training for our youth, job fairs and expos, resume building workshops, and other youth development programs. But this cannot happen. We don't have a community center. This is as devastating as the roads in the rural areas. But Mr. Speaker, there is not enough time to delve into that. Mr. Speaker, it is time for a paradigm shift. It is time for the rural communities to get some attention. We know that these bush communities are considered to be behind a God back. But Mr. Speaker, not because they are out of sight, mean they should be out of mind. And as I close, though we are on opposite sides, this cohort stands as a united family, working for the good of our nation's youth. And so my team and I plan to join hands with the opposition and take the necessary steps to ensure that our youth without a voice have meaningful representation with action, not a bag of mouth. Mr. Speaker, we, the youth parliamentarians, are already on the ground in our counties. Our county project, which we tabled earlier, are evidence of action, not a bag of mouth. For far too long, we make plans for the future without including the future. So to the current government of Jamaica, we give you notice. We give you notice today that the rent of action is long overdue. This cohort of youth parliamentarians serving as landlords will be taking the next steps to hold you accountable and have these issues plaguing our youth evicted. Again, I say to the government of Jamaica, consider our recommendations because notice is served.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. We now welcome a statement from Madam, the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after listening to these powerful submissions made by my colleagues, it is with great pride that I rise to address this House. It warms my heart to know that though we undoubtedly entered these unprecedented times on the low, we, the youth of Jamaica, are leaving it on high. My colleagues, indeed, there is nothing that is wrong with Jamaica that cannot be fixed by what is right with Jamaica. To my colleagues and fellow youth parliamentarians, from Morant Point to South Negro Point, we today are a testimony of this. In June of 2021, a cohort of undoubtedly some of our nation's brightest minds were called upon to serve this great nation by putting forward policies, projects, and other suggestions aimed towards the betterment of our most precious commodity, us, we, our youth.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, though we sit on opposite sides, as my colleague mentioned, we, the opposition, believe in working together with the government in safeguarding the interests of the youth. The NYPJ has created a platform for the issues of youth to be voiced by nobody better than the youth. And no solutions have been put before our sitting government. My colleagues and I have also been provided with the opportunity of deepening our understanding of parliamentary democracy while developing skills in research, policy formulation and analysis, advocacy, public speaking, and communication. Mr. Speaker, we have adequately been equipped to present on topical concerns facing our youth, including the impact of COVID-19 on the education of marginalized youth, youth development opportunities, crime and violence, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, the effect of work from home on domestic violence and child abuse. And finally, but take it from me, most definitely not least, rural development and the need for a paradigm shift. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues have put forward some solutions for these issues. It is now up to our government to get to work. Permit me to remind this honorable House of a few. Now that we've reintroduced face-to-face learning at all levels, it is crucial to prioritize efforts to reach and engage students who have been lost to learning. The time is now. I repeat, the time is now, as my colleagues have all suggested, to get our children back in it. And why is this, Mr. Speaker? Because every child can learn, and so every child simply must learn. And as my spokesperson on economic growth and job creation has suggested, if we seek community change, if we seek parochial change, and if we seek societal change, more youth clubs are needed. Yes. Mr. Speaker, it breaks my heart, but sadly, thousands of youth's future lie in our hands. We owe it to them to ensure that their issues are adequately addressed. My spokesperson on national security has charged this government to act today with no delay in tackling an issue that has plagued our great nation, that of crime and violence. Finally, we have been reminded of the necessity for a paradigm shift in rural development. It is time we reconsider the legalization of marijuana for recreational use, marijuana tourism, and export, as well as revise existing legislations for the safeguarding of prime agricultural lands. The time is now to join the rest of the world by investing in vertical farming. As my colleague greatly puts it, if Jamaica refuses to change, we will be left in the dirt. Our success today would not have been possible without the time, patience, and efforts of a formidable team of men and women whose presence continuously renewed our vigor and passion. To the Ministry of Education and Youth, including Minister, the Honorable Favour Williams, Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Eastern, Miss Yannick Williams, Senior Program Development Specialist, to the hard-working team from the Youth and Adolescents Policy Division, we give thanks, including Miss Jamie Ann Chevan, Senior Director, Mrs. Simone Campbell, Program Development Specialist, to or great, or superb, or phenomenally mendacious Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica, co-chaired by Mr. Orville Levy and Miss Yannick Tracy. Now, Mr. Speaker and other members, it would be remiss of me to not mention that applications for the next cohort of the NYPJ are now open, and I encourage every youth to apply. And lastly, to our facilitators, coaches, Marshal of the House, retired Captain Wayne Blake, clerks, and other members of staff of Gordon House, we thank you. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, the full complement of our Parliament could not join us in person. We pause to acknowledge, thank, and congratulate them. My charge to the youth of this nation is to continue to dream, continue to believe in yourselves, continue to act, and continue to speak. We have failed Jasmine Dean. We have failed Gabriel King. We have failed the 180,000 students disengaged from the education system since the start of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, we cannot afford to fail any more of our youth. Mr. Speaker, the youth of this nation have spoken. The onus is now on our sitting government to act accordingly. The opposition rests.
Hold on.
I would like to thank the Leader of the Opposition for that wonderful speech. House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there be no further business. I now move that this Honorable House do adjourn. Sign die.
The question is that this Honorable House do now adjourn, sign die. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned.